Now to Saskatchewan, where the province's new school pronoun policy is facing a legal challenge. The policy requires schools to seek parental permission before allowing children under 16 years of age to change their preferred names or pronouns. National LGBT advocacy organization EGAL Canada, which has joined the lawsuit, says the policy change is unconstitutional. In a letter to the province's education minister, EGAL Canada writes this: the policy will cause devastating and irreparable, that is, harm to gender-diverse students who don't feel comfortable coming out at home. These students will face an impossible choice: be outed to their parents under the policy or remain closeted at school. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe stood by his government's policy change earlier this week.
It is, by its very design, an inclusive policy, and when we have the opportunity as a government to look at a policy that is going to bring parents closer to their children's education, we're going to look at that policy very seriously.
Now, that Saskatchewan policy change comes on the heels of similar changes made in New Brunswick. Let's get more from the federal government. Randy Boissonnault is the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Official Languages. He joins us from Edmonton. So, Minister, you argue that these new school pronoun rules, they're the wrong way to go here, that they're dangerous. Tell me why that's your opinion.
Travis, thanks for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it. I think we got to start by just realizing how vulnerable the kids we're talking about are. We're talking about kids who are determining what their identity is. They're maybe, questioning their own sexual orientation. And these are some of the most, vulnerable and marginalized people in our society, even within the queer community. The queer community is not always fully accepting of trans people, and that's something that needs to be worked on in our own community. But what we're talking about is kids that just need the safe space to be who they're meant to be. That's the first thing. So they're very vulnerable population in our school and in our society. The next thing is, if we take a look at the role of parents in all of this, a great majority of loving, caring parents are very involved in the lives of their kids. And quite frankly, they probably already know either their children's sexual orientation or their gender identity. And, they wait. And probably the reason they know is because their kids have told them. And I think what we have to think about are, the kids for whom their parents might not be supportive, and that coming out before they're ready could put them at risk of being homeless. In my own city of Edmonton, which well, Travis, 50% of the youth homeless population are queer kids. It's about the same number in Calgary. St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador has been as high as 70%. And so there's real risk when kids are forced to come out early, there's disruption in the family, and kids find themselves on the street. The other thing is, this is the population of kids that has the highest incidence of suicidal thoughts and also suicidal attempts. And something as simple as just, making sure kids' pronouns are used. In a study from 2018, showed that suicide thinking goes down 35%, but that also suicide attempts go down 65%. And then I guess finally, I'm completely mystified why conservative provincial governments and now the Conservative Party nationally wants to make schools less safe for a really vulnerable population.
Well, so
why are you picking on queer kids?
Right. So do you think that Premier Moe and Premier Higgs here are irresponsible? Because they say they're listening to parents, and I know you quoted some stats, but I'll quote a recent poll here by Angus Reid that shows 2 in 5 Canadians, 43%, say that parents should be informed and must give consent if a child wants to change how they identify. So, at least according to this poll, that is not a fringe opinion. So do you feel that Premier Moe and Higgs are being irresponsible or just listening to parents?
Well, look, I don't know that there's a mandatory requirement to call home when kids want to join the chess club or when they decide to join a certain sports club. So I'm not sure why.
Isn't this
kids,
different, though?
I look, it's a fundamental question of identity and making sure that, kids are allowed to be who they're meant to be. I mean, Travis, I don't think we want to turn back all the good work that's been done on anti-bullying, right? Mm-hmm. We don't want to throw that out the window because, some kids have been taken to task for being bullies. And so in the reverse sense, why are we going to change things for a population that's really vulnerable? And can't actually advocate for themselves if they can't actually be who they're meant to be safely. And I guess what mystifies me is with all of the really serious issues that we are facing as a country, whether it's the housing crisis, whether it's making sure cost of living gets dealt with, getting interest rates under control, that the Conservative premier and CPC nationally are trying to bring culture wars, American style culture wars, to Canada. I just don't get it. Like,
Is it being used as a wedge
take me to
issue?
task. I think the Conservatives are trying to do so. And look, I'm part of the Canadian Pride Caucus. It's a group of LGBTQ parliamentarians. And what we're trying to do, what we said we would do, is that we wouldn't weaponize LGBTQ issues. And that's exactly what they're doing. And what's really sad is that they're going after the most vulnerable part of our community, our society, which is kids. And look, you can take me to task in question period. You can take me to task as a federal minister, but don't go after queer kids. That's not on.
You know, the change in Saskatchewan is now facing a legal challenge. Is there a role for the federal government to play here?
Well, the role for the federal government is to do exactly what we're doing, which is to help people understand just how vulnerable these kids are. And it's too early for me to speculate what role the federal government might have in any legal action. But this is beyond legal action. It's just wrong. Like, school should be a place where kids are safe and where they're able to be who they're meant to be. I mean, like, Travis, I came out to my parents at 27. Like, I was a full-fledged adult, and I told everybody in my world before I told my parents, because I didn't know how it would go down. And they were loving, they were amazing, and they looked at me and they said, "We knew." And I said, "Well, why the heck didn't you tell me? It saved me a lot of years." And they said, "You needed to tell us when you were ready, so that you could, be yourself." I can't imagine what pressure young people are under to just figure out who they are in this world, and then to now know that a school isn't a safe place for them to be who they're meant to be. I gotta give my hat off to the Ontario Principals Federation for coming out against this issue and saying, look, we got to keep kids safe in our schools. And so I think the role of the federal government is just to have this conversation with people and to let Canadians know that, yes, we're focused on housing,
Right.
on making sure that people can make cost of living. But when it comes to protecting kids, I swore an oath to serve this country and to do politics in full sentences. And if we're going to make schools less safe for kids, then I'm going to speak out against it. And that's why I'm here today.